What's up, YouTube? The Bearded Outdoorsman, your guide to all things gear and beards. Are you planning on going hiking or backpacking? Not sure what to do, how to do it? Here we're going to go over my 9 steps that I use when I'm planning a backpacking or hiking trip. So stay tuned. And here we are. Alright guys, so planning for a hike can be a daunting task if you're unfamiliar with it. So what we're going to go over today are 9 steps that I use personally anytime that I'm planning a hike. All right, it can be a overnight, it can be a weekend, whatever, but these are the 9 steps that I use every single time when I'm planning my hikes. All right guys, so step 1 is dates. You got to know how long you want to go, and you got to figure out when you want to go. So that's going to be key. Some people, I like hiking on the AT. Some people don't like going to the AT during peak season. So during April and October, people don't like going to hike on the AT during those times. So you've got to figure out those dates and then figure out your length of time. Now, as a father, as somebody who works 2 jobs, it's a little harder to pick those dates, but it's one of those things that you need to do early on, and you can do this well in advance of planning your trip. Step 2, location, distance. I put those together because I think they go hand in hand. Now you've got to figure out where you want to go. That can be a broad sense. You can say, I want to go hike on the AT in Georgia. It's pretty broad. And then as you start looking at a map, you can kind of narrow that down and get it a little narrower. But you need to figure out your location and your distance. How far do you want to go? Are you a new hiker and only want to go for 10 or 12 miles? Or do you want to push it to 20 or 30 miles for this trip? And that kind of correlates back to number 1 is your dates. How much time do you have? That kind of thing. Now, personally, I believe that step 1 and step 2 can be interchanged. You can crisscross them, and you can do location and distance first and then figure out your time frame and your dates. But either way, these are the first 2 steps in planning your hike. Now that you have steps 1 and steps 2 done, step 3, weather. Now, if you're planning this trip a year out, now you're not going to be able to see what's being forecasted, but you can look at the trends. So look at those trends for that area, where you're going to be going for that time of year, and you can plan better. And once it starts getting closer and you can see that forecast, you want to know, is it going to be snowing 2 days before I get there? Is it supposed to start snowing 2 days after I leave? Then you're going to know that a cold front may be pushing through, at least for your last night, and you can kind of better plan. So that's what this whole video is about, is planning for that trip. So you want to watch that weather. Now for me, when I plan a trip, if I plan a trip 6 months in advance, and as soon as I can start seeing that forecast, I'm watching that forecast. I'm watching that forecast every single day, looking at changes to know if I need to tweak anything in my gear. So I think it's very important that we watch that weather. Step 4, transportation. Are you going to drive to a trailhead, hike a loop, and leave? That's cool if that's what you want to do. If you want to go from point A to point B and get off the trail, then you either need a shuttle, you need 2 vehicles, especially if you're going by yourself. How are you going to arrange that transportation? My saying is, shuttles cost money, friends don't. So if you've got friends that are in a certain area, there's forums, there's all kind of stuff where you can reach out and find people that might be willing to do it for free, take you and drop you off at the trailhead, leaving your vehicle where you like to finish. That's personally what I like to do. I like to leave a vehicle where I plan on stopping at, get a ride to the trailhead, hike to my vehicle, and I'm done. I don't have to wait on anybody. So those are things also you need to think about. Once you figure out where you're going, you need to figure out that transportation situation on how you're going to get to the trailhead or how you're going to get back to your vehicle. If you need to get a hotel room, you need to start planning on that. That's something key. I mean, I've done that before, where got a hotel the night before, got up the next morning, parked the car at the trailhead, at the end point, got a ride to the trailhead and hike, and got an early start, got going early. It was a good trip. So those are things to think about. All right, step 5, gear. What are you planning on taking? Are you planning on sleeping in a tent? You plan on sleeping in a tent? You plan on sleeping in a hammock? If you plan on sleeping in a hammock, you're gonna need extra gear that you wouldn't need in a tent. Vice versa. If you're taking a tent, you're gonna have need gear that you wouldn't have for a hammock. So just for like my hammock setup, you're gonna have a hammock, you're gonna have an underquilt. Well, those are two things that you wouldn't need if you were in a tent. So make that decision early. Decide what you're gonna do. Decide how you plan on cooking your food, because once you decide on how you're gonna cook your food, then you can decide on what kind of food you wanna take. So, but deciding on how you wanna cook, do you wanna cook over a fire? Are you going somewhere where you can even have fires? Do you wanna have a jet boil-like system? Do you want to have a Espit style cook system? So there's different variations and a lot of different varieties of cook kits. How do you want to prepare your food is gonna lead you down the path of what kind of food you can take. So keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to gear and clothing and preparing for the weather, I like to prepare for 10 to 15 degrees colder than what the forecast is, because you never know when it's gonna change, and it's a lot easier to take a jacket off and wear a t-shirt, or take a t-shirt off and even hike with no shirt on for a guy, than it is to add clothes that you don't have. So keep that in mind. Like I said, I always go for about 10 to 15 degrees cooler than what the forecast is. Step 6, food. Now that you've decided how you want to prepare your meals, you can figure out what you want to take for meals. You can do something like this mountain house. You can build your own meals. I've done that before, go on and just kind of put together stuff. I'll do a video later on some of my food choices that I like to take. Just keep in mind that you're gonna be burning a lot of calories, so you need a lot of calorie intake. So it can be something simple, it can be snack food, but you need to figure out what you're gonna take for your meals. Again, that's something that I don't decide on, because I've got a couple different varieties of cook kits. I don't decide what I'm gonna take for food until I've decided what I'm gonna carry for my cook kit. You can also take meals that require zero cooking at all. So keep that in mind. If you don't want to even take a cook kit, if you're only going for 1 or 2 nights, you may not even want to cook food. You may just want to take stuff that's ready made. All right, so now we've got our location, our dates, our gear, our food, we know the weather. Now we've got to decide what pack we want to take. All right, so I own a bunch of packs, but I don't decide which pack I want to take for a trip until I've looked at the weather, till I know what gear I want to take. Then I decide on a pack, because I have larger packs, I have smaller packs, and I'm not going to carry a large pack if the weather is going to allow me to pack less stuff and I can use a smaller pack. So I have some smaller day packs, and I like carrying those if I'm not carrying a bunch of gear. So something like this, if you don't have a pack, something like this, it's a 50 liter, picked up on Amazon. Price is very reasonable. I did a review on it. I'll put a card up top where I did a review on this, and it served me well. I took this on my Blood Mountain loop, where I hiked Blood Mountain for 2 days. I did a 1-night overnighter, and it served me well. It's a good size for that kind of trip. It wasn't very cold, so I didn't need a whole lot of gear, but this is a really good pack for that. I also have an 80 liter pack, and that's going to be more for those really cold nights where I need a lot of cold weather gear, or those longer trips. So keep that in mind, and don't pick a pack until you've picked all your gear, because then you're going to be cramming it in there. Step number 8, packing. You got to get all that gear in that pack you just picked. So while you're packing it, make you a list. Write down what you put in, what kind of stuff sack you're using, whatever. Make you a list. That way, I like to make a list of what goes in my pack. That way I can revise that list. I can look at that list and review that list, and after my pack's already done, and I can go, oh, well, I forgot this, and I can add it. I don't have to empty my pack to see what I packed and what I've forgotten. So making that list, and then I've been hiking for many years. I still make a list. I still make a list to make sure I don't forget that little thing that you wouldn't think about. So a list goes a long way. All right, final step, and one that I feel is extremely important, whether you're going by yourself, you're going with a group, either way. Something that I feel is extremely important is writing down your itinerary. Now, I like to write if I'm planning to stay at a hotel. If I've already booked that hotel, then I'm writing that hotel name down. Where I plan to start, how far I plan to go. If I have an idea of what, like for me on the AT, there's shelters. So if I know I want to stop at a certain shelter, I'm writing all that down in my itinerary. Now, some of it can change, but I'm writing it all out. Now, the point of this is I'm going to make 2 copies of that. One, I'm going to put in my vehicle. The other, I'm going to give it to my wife. All right, so if I don't call her within a little while of that trip being over or at any point during that trip, then she can reach out to Forest Service or the authorities up in that area, and they have an itinerary. They'll know where my car is. They'll know that I have an itinerary in there. They can get it and they can look for me. So if something bad happens, you need that itinerary. That itinerary could mean the difference in life and death. And I do it whether I'm going by myself or whether I'm going with a group of people. And I think it's a good habit to get into. You don't have to give it to just one person. You could make 5 copies and give it to various different people. If I wasn't married, I'd probably give it to about 3 or 4 people. But I know my wife's gonna check on me. So, all right, folks. So that was my 9 steps when planning a hike or a backpacking trip. Drop me a comment. Let me know if you do something different in there, if you have a 10th step, or if you do something different. I'd love to hear from you. If you're in the middle of planning a hike right now, if this video helped you, drop me a thumbs up. Please consider hitting that subscribe button as well, but make sure to drop me a comment. I read every single comment. I try to reply to every one of them. Drop me a question. I'll be glad to answer them. I'll put links in the description below for anything I went over today. I'll list those steps out there. And as always, stay bearded, get outdoors, and God bless.